In the spring of 49 BC, the heart of the Roman Republic beat with uncertainty. The Senate was split between loyalty to the general Pompey and fear of the rising power of Julius Caesar. Civil war was no longer a question of if, only when. And while Rome prepared for open conflict, another war was being fought in silence in the marble corridors of Palatine Hill. Death came quietly that year. It did not arrive with the clash of swords or the roar of the mob. It came on the breath of crushed herbs, in the dregs of wine, in the faint aftertaste of bitter almonds. Those who fell to it had no warning, no defense, only sudden sickness, a weakening heartbeat, and a darkness from which they did not return. The victims had one thing in common: influence. They were senators, noble women, wealthy patrons, and even the relatives of men who held Rome's fate in their hands. And while the city's attention was fixed on Caesar's legions, someone else was cleansing Palatine Hill of its most powerful voices. The first recorded death came in early March. Gaius Scribonius Curio the Elder, a respected senator, collapsed during a banquet in his own home. Witnesses claimed he was laughing one moment and struggling to breathe the next. By morning, he was gone. The city's physicians blamed a seizure, common enough in an age with little understanding of the body. No suspicion was raised. 2 weeks later, Servilia's niece, Livia Pulchra, was found dead in her bed. Her skin, attendants said, was cold but oddly flushed. Her mouth was stained a faint, unnatural hue. Again, a physician was summoned. Again, the death was ruled natural. But the slaves who tended her whispered to one another in the kitchen. They had heard someone in her chamber long after the torches were put out. By the end of April, there had been 4 more sudden deaths, all within walking distance of each other on Palatine Hill. A senator seized with violent coughing in the forum. A wealthy matron collapsing in her garden. A young heir found lifeless in the atrium of his family villa. The death struck without warning and left no obvious mark. For centuries, this string of tragedies was known only from brief mentions in scattered Roman histories. But in 2017, archaeologists excavating beneath the ruins of a patrician villa discovered something that would bring the case back to life. Hidden behind a false wall in the lowest storeroom, they found a sealed chamber. Inside were clay amphorae, their interiors coated with a residue still faintly smelling of bitter almonds. Alongside them lay a set of bronze surgical tools, their edges dulled with age, and a bundle of wax tablets bound together with corroded bronze wire. The tablets, once carefully cleaned and stabilized, were revealed to be patient notes, written in Greek and signed with the name Lucius Theophilos. Historians knew the name, a Greek physician who served several elite Roman households in the late Republic. But these were not ordinary medical records. Interspersed with the expected symptoms and treatments were cryptic lines. One entry read, "The lady sleeps well tonight, though the draft was strong. The senator has begun the cough. Soon, the guest will dine unseen." Who, or what, was the guest? Some believed it was a poetic term for death. Others thought it might have been a code name for an accomplice. But one thing was clear: these were not neutral medical notes. They read like a man keeping score. Among the victims named in the tablets were the same figures recorded in Senate archives as having died that spring. But there were also unfamiliar names, people whose deaths were never officially recorded. Servants, clients, even a Greek tutor to one senator's children. The scope of the deaths appeared far wider than history had realized. One of the most striking pieces of evidence in the tablets was a description of a treatment mixture: ground hemlock root, almond oil, and a small measure of imported cinnabar. Modern toxicologists have confirmed that in these quantities, the concoction would be deadly, first numbing the limbs, then arresting the breath, often without leaving a visible trace in the victim's body. The amphorae found in the storeroom were tested. Microscopic residue of coniine, the toxin in hemlock, was present in at least 3 of them. But how did these deaths go unnoticed in a city as politically charged as Rome? The answer may lie in the only surviving testimony connected to the case, preserved in a damaged papyrus transcript from a minor court proceeding later that year. It tells of a freedman named Quintus, arrested while attempting to flee the city. In his possession were 2 items, a purse of silver and a small jar of wine infused with hemlock. Under questioning, Quintus claimed he had been paid to deliver the jar to a banquet. He described the man who gave it to him. He wore the white tunic of a physician, but his hands smelled of bitter almonds and rue. He came at night, when the torches were low, and left before the rooster crowed. Quintus named this man only as the Greek. When asked if he meant Lucius Theophilos, he refused to answer. The record ends abruptly. No sentencing is recorded, and Quintus disappears entirely from the historical record. This has led some historians to believe that the entire matter was buried deliberately. In 49 BC, the Senate was desperate to avoid further instability. The deaths, though troubling, may have been deemed a lesser danger than scandal. Others propose that the poisonings were not random at all, but part of a targeted purge. The victims, they argue, shared political loyalties that opposed Julius Caesar. If Lucius Theophilos was in Caesar's pay, these killings could have been an attempt to weaken his enemies before the war even began. Not all agree with this theory. Dr. Helena Vero, a historian at the University of Naples, offers another view. The tablets are far too detailed for a hired assassin. Theophilos notes sleep patterns, minor symptoms, and subtle changes in the patient's mood. This is the work of someone in prolonged contact with the victims, someone trusted. I believe Theophilos acted on his own, perhaps out of personal grievance, perhaps for some twisted sense of justice. One of the final tablet entries is damaged, but legible enough to read. The hill is cleansed. The feast may begin. No one knows what feast he meant. Was it a literal celebration? Or was it a metaphor, the end of his work, the moment he had prepared for? By June of that year, Lucius Theophilos vanished. His name appears in no further records. Some believe he fled Rome before Caesar's return. Others think he met the same fate as his victims, silenced by those he served. The villa where the tablets were found burned during the chaos of the Civil War. Whether by accident or design, most of the evidence of the poisonings was lost. Today, the amphorae remain in the restricted archives of the Capitoline Museum. They are not displayed to the public. The wax tablets are held in climate-controlled storage, accessible only to scholars. The poisoner of Palatine Hill remains a phantom in history, his guilt unproven, his motives unknown. Perhaps he was an agent of politics. Perhaps he acted for personal vengeance. Or perhaps he truly believed, as his notes suggest, that he was cleansing Rome of corruption. In a city built on betrayal, power, and blood, it is not always easy to tell the difference between justice and murder.